The title of my talk today is Ties That Bind, and I'll look at Michael Haneke's pedagogy, or black pedagogy, in his film The White Ribbon, Das weiße Band, from 2009. There's an amusing and a telling anecdote about an important English film critic at the Cannes premiere of Michael Haneke's Das weiße Band, The White Ribbon, a German children's story. His 2009 film about small-town brutality in northwestern Germany in 1913-14, which was shot in such a way as to exude a particularly literary aura. So it was filmed in color and later desaturated into a black and white film in post-production. This English critic was fooled into thinking it was an adaptation. He supposedly ran out of the cinema to ask a colleague, so who wrote the screenplay, Schnitzler? This little story says less about the speaker, and we can be so generous as to forgive his lack of knowledge of Austrian literature because it can't possibly resemble Schnitzler if you know anything about Schnitzler. So this little story says less about the speaker than about Haneke's modus operandi and his method of working as a literary filmmaker. With this celebrated film, for which he received the Palme d'Or in Cannes, the European Film Prize, the Prize of the German Film Critics, and for which he was nominated for the Foreign Language Oscar, Haneke continues and perfects the work of translation that he began 30 years earlier with his adaptation of Ingeborg Bachmann's story, Three Paths to the Lake, from 1976. The White Ribbon is an adaptation fake, if you will, completing his cycle of real adaptations of Austrian writers Joseph Roth, Franz Kafka, and Elfriede Jelinek. It pretends to have issued forth from a novella of poetic realism, whose narrative frame is very noticeable, and whose unreliable narrator problematizes the veracity of the story. In my book, I describe this modus operandi as a kind of translatory labor of love, one that depends on productive misunderstandings, on the loss inherent in translation, to activate viewers' complex response in the service of working through the past. Here, this productive misunderstanding touches upon the desire of the viewer to localize one referent, to find one source, rather than numerous historical reference points in the film. The Habsburg trauma, so the breakup of the multi-ethnic state in 1918, the rise of fascism as an outgrowth of authoritarian disciplinary methods, as well as the German radicalism of the 1960s and 70s, presented here in this film as a restrictive Protestantism. I'd like to talk today about a number of stereoscopic effects that result from the director's blending of different time periods and the film's resulting temporal vagueness. So part one, the abuse of history for memory. So what precisely is the nature of this film's historical anamnesis? A number of critics have remarked that Haneke here moves away from his interest in post-colonialism and contemporary multi-ethnic Europe, which were so strongly present in films such as Code Inconnu from 2000 and Caché from 2005. For them, The White Ribbon represents a return to his early trilogy of glaciation, The Seventh Continent, Benny's Video, and 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Chance, and its interest in what we might call a kind of everyday fascism. The White Ribbon takes place, as I mentioned, in 1913-1914 in a small village whose name, Eichwald, is reminiscent in its composition of both Eichmann and Buchenwald. Peter Kümmel, who has remarked on this fact in his review in Die Zeit, has seen the name itself as a direct allusion to the rise of Nazism. We can, in a view that he shares with many others, see Eichwald as an epicenter of German developments in the 20s and 30s. The male fantasies that the film presents are those that Klaus Teweleit has so trenchantly analyzed in The Members of the Freikorps, the paramilitary groups arising in Weimar Germany, in large numbers in Eastern Germany, also known as the White Terror, and I think there's some allusion to this in the title itself. In the fantasies of the men of Eichwald, the women and the children become the permissible scapegoats in the male idealizations, simply written out of the narrative when they become too present. As Teweleit explains, gender relationships become the contested arena in which fantasies of vanquishing and victory are played out.